Welcome back to the She Can channel, where women lead with their stories. They lead by example, their insight and experiences to mentor others. And we're so excited to talk to Leslie Zane today. Leslie, welcome to She Can. We want to know everything about you and your new book, The Power of Instinct, that has come out, and we're going to talk about your story today. So you are an award-winning marketer, TEDx speaker, author, and foremost authority in harnessing the instinctive mind to accelerate brand and business growth. And you have done this for 3 decades. You now run the Center for Emotional Marketing, which you launched in 1995 as Triggers, the first brand consulting firm rooted in behavioral science. And together with your team, you cracked the code of accelerating brand growth. So over the last 3 decades, you've delivered more than $25 billion in incremental revenue for Fortune 100 clients. You're an alumni of Yale, Harvard Business School, Bain Company, P&G, and you're the recipient of the Congressional Women of Distinction Award and the Ogilvy Award. And you wrote this amazing book, The Power of Instinct, which is your groundbreaking book challenging conventional wisdom in business and brand building. Tell us more about yourself first and how you think you got to this stage of your life.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. And lovely to meet all of your fabulous listeners. First of all, thank you for that amazing intro. I would say that I got started by asking a lot of questions. My nickname at Harvard Business School was Miss Question. I always had this need to sort of challenge authority and understand why people were telling me the things that they were. And my very dear friend, Richard Nanula, nicknamed me that because I was the only one who had the guts to put up her hand in a section of 90 people at Harvard Business School and ask the question that, nobody else wanted to ask because they were afraid that they would look stupid. And I didn't care if I looked stupid. I just wanted to learn. So I asked a lot of questions, and I think I got just deeper and deeper into this whole area of how people make decisions. I was always fascinated by that. How consumers, customers, anybody, B2B, B2C, make decisions. And when I was inside the corporate world doing that, I found that I really couldn't fully explore my ideas because the traditional way of doing marketing was very different and kind of a little bit of a rigid approach. So ultimately, after having a lot of different tussles, with lots of different people, I decided in 1995 to leave the corporate world and explore and create this system for influencing people's choices. And then I just basically came back to serve the very companies that I had left, P&G and Johnson & Johnson, et cetera. But it really was all in pursuit of the truth. Getting to the truth of how people actually decide. I had been told that they make decisions based on sort of barraging people with messages, or if you give them a coupon, or if you give them a discount, then they're going to buy. But I knew that that only would give you a fleeting bump in sales. And I thought there was something deeper going on. And I've basically been exploring that my entire life. So the Center for Emotional Marketing was the name of my company when I first started. And then I realized it doesn't have anything to do with emotion, and we can talk about that. So I changed the name of the company to Triggers Brand Consulting. And we've had that name for the last 10 or 15 years.
Leslie, so tell us a little bit more about exactly that. How did you get to the stage where you thought, actually, it's not so much about the conscious mind, it's much more about the unconscious mind, and also how you then got to writing your book, The Power of Instinct, and tell us more what that book is about.
So when I was inside the corporate world, I saw that a lot of the businesses and brands that were, in the portfolio of Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson weren't growing, or they weren't growing as fast as they should have been. And I said, wait a minute, like, what's up with that? This is P&G. If they don't know how to make marketing the engine of growth, then that means nobody knows. And so that's when I realized that there was really more to explore. And I felt that marketing was just very hit or miss. If your creative had a great idea in the shower, your ad agency creative, then you were going to have a great, campaign. But that was very, once in a blue moon. So I wanted to basically institutionalize business growth, find a way to make a brand. And really, this applies to any brand. It could be your personal brand. It could be a commercial brand. It could be a social cause, a movement, like literally anything you work on. The rules in my book apply to that. But essentially, I wrote the book, first of all, to encapsulate everything I had learned over 30 years so that I could pass that down to kind of all of the people that are just starting out and not make the same mistakes that I saw business people make throughout my career. So I'd say that was the first reason. And the second reason was I really felt that marketing has been following an old playbook. If you think about how traditional marketing got started, it was like 50, 60 years ago, before we really understood the science of the brain. So we thought that it was really the conscious mind that was making all the decisions back then, when in fact, it's the unconscious mind that makes the decisions. But we didn't learn that until really the 2000s. Daniel Kahneman, Think Fast and Slow, Predictably Irrational, all of those things came out, honestly, like 2010, 2011. We're talking really, really late. So all these years, marketing has been using an approach that I found actually competes with and conflicts with the conscious mind. So we really need a new playbook that harnesses the instinctive mind, works with the mind much more collaboratively, because that's when you get ahead. That's when you can grow businesses faster. That's when you can basically get people to do what you want, to buy into your ideas, buy into your plans and strategies if you're working at a company, build your personal brand, really get your next job, know what to do when you walk into an interview, how you should handle that, and we can cover all of these different examples because the power of instinct, the new rules of persuasion in business and life. My book really gives examples of all of those different applications. And that's really exciting to me. I didn't want to create just a book that only applied to the business world. If you learn this construct or these several constructs that I explain in the book, you'll actually be able to make a bigger impact in every aspect of your life.
Yeah, that's what I think. You really help people play a bigger game, come into their power, and use that in whatever that they are doing in their lives. So you open your book by saying that human beings are unpersuadable. So how did you make this discovery, Leslie? And what have marketers been doing wrong all these years, do you think?
I think that marketers have been determined to change people's mind, to persuade, to argue their case, to give, superiority claims. This is better, therefore you must use it. Basically, you will use this brand. And I think that's a very confrontational model of marketing. Adam Grant actually talks about confronting versus collaborating with the unconscious mind, and that is very consistent with my approach. But my book is like the playbook for how to do that. So how did I see it? I saw that the business approaches that were being used weren't working. They were not able to grow businesses. They were stagnating. So the company would be like spend more and more money and more media dollars, basically barraging people with messages. And it just was going in one ear and out the other. And I basically said, look, there has to be a better way. Let's find out what's going on in the instinctive mind, in the unconscious mind. And that's what I've spent 30 years perfecting, a process that actually figures out which levers you need to push, how to take down barriers that people have, implicit barriers that actually don't show up in regular research, and tap into their drivers, their implicit drivers, the things that actually make a difference, that are very nuanced and aren't tracked in traditional brand tracking studies, as an example.
Leslie, I think that what you're writing about and what you're talking about is a very right-minded way. So that's a very female way of looking at things. And because the corporate world is still predominantly male, what you're saying, and especially when you started talking about this importance of the instinctive mind, it was very controversial, but it's still actually quite controversial. So talk us through that.
Oh my God. So, the beginning of my career, I was young, I was female, I was blonde, and I was argumentative.
Mm,
So basically, four things that are not a great combination in the corporate world. And all of my bosses were male. And I had these very different ideas. And perhaps you're right. Perhaps it was my female brain that enabled me to see these things. I write the story in one of the early chapters of my book about um, telling Johnson's Baby that they should put the first father in an ad, because
mm,
I saw that when a dad walked down the street pushing a baby carriage, he got a completely different reaction than a mom doing the same thing.
definitely.
Um, but I was accused of being executional. And I got a bad performance review that year for pushing that idea too hard. I did. It said, Leslie is too passionate about putting fathers in advertising, and this is an executional concern, not a strategic one.
That
I can laugh about it today, but honestly, back then, I cried myself to sleep. And I had been told in all of my jobs and at business school that I was very strategic. So it was hugely insulting and very upsetting. But because, you don't know me very well, but I'm very persistent. I just didn't give up. I
yeah.
kept pushing my point of view. And finally, they gave in, I think, just out of sheer exhaustion. They put the first father in a Johnson's Baby shampoo commercial, and products started flying off the shelves.
Mm,
It was the highest scoring commercial in the company's history. And the most important thing for me personally, obviously, I was incredibly thrilled that I had been able to show an impact on business from this very unconscious concept. But basically, that was my first trigger. Father giving baby a shampoo,
mm,
bathing baby and baby washing his or her hair. That was the first trigger that I had identified. And I talk about that in the book, what growth triggers are. They're like cognitive shortcuts that work at this unconscious level. They're almost like fertilizer to your brand. But so, I mean, the simple thing to say is that it was not easy, but I stuck to my guns, and I also have learned a lot from those early years. I was confronting the conscious mind of my bosses. If we want to use my same construct on what I was doing, why wasn't it working? Why were they rejecting what I was selling? So to speak, I was confronting the conscious mind. And I think I've learned a lot since then about how to navigate an organization, and how to build support, and how to essentially work with people to get to the right conclusions,
yeah.
and being much more collaborative. And that's worked, much better. But I'm sure, like a lot of other young women in the audience, we were passionate about our ideas. And so that's something that I think comes a little bit with time and maturity and age. But if you read the stories in my book, maybe you'll be able to avoid some of that and learn how to navigate the system a little bit earlier than I did.
Leslie, so tell us a little bit more detail. Give us some top tips on how the girls and women that are listening, how they can seek their career growth or how a company can grow according to your guidelines.
So I'd like to introduce the concept of the brand connectome, because that's a really important concept in the book, and it really helps you understand how the world works. So that object behind me, hopefully some of the people who have this on video will be able to see it, is a symbolic representation of the brand connectome. This is essentially the cumulative memories that get attached to any brand in the unconscious mind. It's literally a physical thing. It has physicality.
Mm-hmm.
And that brand connectome is actually what's dictating your choices and other people's choices every single day. So if you go into the supermarket and you reach for Pepsi over Coke, it's because your Pepsi brand connectome is physically larger in your mind, has more positive associations, and is more distinctive than your Pepsi brand connectome. And the opposite would be true for people who use Coca-Cola. And so every decision that anybody makes on anything, the presidential campaign that we have coming up here in the United States, whether you're going to vote for former President Trump or Vice President Kamala Harris, whether you're going to be Republican or Democrat, whether, how to build your own personal brand in the business world.
Yeah.
All of this is, everybody has a brand connectome, and our job is to make it as large. It's a large physical footprint in the brain, because if it's large, it's going to be more likely your instinctive brand preference, because it's just more salient in your mind. Positive, because negative associations hold back growth, and they also hold back careers, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And then distinctiveness, you need a little bit of a twist. You don't need to come to the company party in a Hawaiian shirt. You don't need to be, from Mars. But you do need to just be a little bit distinctive. It's something a little bit special to differentiate you for the next guy. But the first two are really the most important ones: salience, the large footprint, and positive associations. So we all of us, everybody in your audience, you, me, we're all gardeners. And we need to grow these cumulative memories about our brand, this brand connectome, so that it's as large and positive and distinctive as possible. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, Leslie. I'm wondering, so all the words and the communications and what we embody has to be very conscious, right? We have to really think about the words we use, the messages we send out, what we represent in the world. You branded this era as being the age of instinct. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I believe that basically since around 2020 on, we have entered the age of instinct. And why I call it that is because I think there is a greater appreciation of how the human mind works than we've ever had before. Now, I'm sure 100 years from now, they'll make fun of us for being completely primitive and knowing nothing. But we certainly know more now than we knew 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And what we know is that the brain is a connecting machine.
Yeah.
It makes analogies. It is analogic. It is constantly connecting the dots, and one part of the brain is talking to another in this vast wiring, neural map of interconnected wires. And so understanding that basically all of our most important decisions, which are like 95% of our decisions, are instinctive, are run from this command control center of the brand connectome, is really important, because it will empower you in the business world, in your personal life, to know what other people don't yet know. But what we are seeing, and I call it the age of instinct, is that we're seeing this infiltrate chief marketing officer, marketing department, teams, board members are starting to talk about it. So I really feel that that it's the age of instinct, not only because of the brand connectome and what we do, but I mean, just look at AI. The reason that we have this incredible, ChatGPT AI capability today is that the scientists figured out that the brain is not a sequential computer. It doesn't make decisions step by step by step by step. That's how they had been approaching it. And that's why we didn't have AI until now. Finally, Jeffrey Hinton and other leading scientists figured out that we actually need to emulate how the human brain works. And the human brain is not sequential, it's analogic, it's connecting dots. So in many ways, the brand connectome is like AI in that it runs on connections. I see those two things as being really similar. And I think people who don't understand and tap into this new world of AI and behavioral science, I think they're going to be kind of left behind from a business standpoint.
Yeah. Leslie, so you've been talking about how you are persistent. You were well ahead of your time. You had ideas that were very controversial back then, and that you look back now and think, now is the time. And so now you understand, looking back, how you have been ahead of your time. What do you feel are your top qualities that really serve you every day? A lot of our listeners, especially younger girls, can identify with those notions, which then helps them find their purpose or their next step or overcome challenges or whatever it may be.
I mean, I would say the most important thing is really to listen to your own instincts,
Mm,
and be who you are. I think a lot of us are afraid to be who we are, especially in the business world. I will absolutely tell you that when I was, younger, starting out with my business 25, 30 years ago, and I had little kids, I would hide the fact that I was a mother. We had a little system. There was a phone outside my office. It was the old phones. And if line 2 was lit up, the boys knew, stay away from mommy's office because, God forbid somebody should know that I'm also a mom.
yeah.
And so I think I had in those early years 2 very different personas. I had my business woman persona, and I had my Leslie, who Leslie is, persona. And I think as I got older, I realized that to be successful, I actually needed to bring Leslie to the business world
Yeah.
and be myself and, share stories about my boss, my boys, and, relate to people on a personal level as well as a business level, not hide who I was. So I would say, if anything, get comfortable in your own skin, be yourself, obviously within the realm of respectable civil behavior, because you still have to align with the values of an organization if you're working for a company.
Sure.
And you need to be a cheerleader for that company for sure. But I think you can do that and you can still be yourself. And I think people really respect that authenticity.
Yeah.
I would say that was a huge unlock for me, realizing that I didn't need to be a split personality, that I could bring these 2 personas together.
Leslie, and so tell us a little bit about the challenges that you face with in your life, in your work these days, and how you reframe them for yourself to push forwards.
Um, so I would say that we had a lot of resistance, as you have said early on, because these ideas were very, almost bizarre at the time that I was talking about instinct, the unconscious mind. I would say when we would go listen to focus groups, I don't believe what people are saying, and that was heresy. I'm like, how do we know people even know why they buy the brands they do? When I watch somebody in the supermarket, I see they just reach, put a product in the cart, and they walk out,
Yeah.
right? Like, how do we know they're telling us the truth? And, all of this later turned out to be true, that people don't know why they buy the brands they do. And you have to get to their implicit connections, implicit associations, positive, negative, implicit barriers, implicit drivers. Those are the things. There is a way to get there through memory elicitation, but just asking people, what do you like and dislike, that will literally take you in the wrong direction every single time. So it was very hard at the beginning, but it's not, I can say, at least I can say this now, 30 years later, I don't feel like I'm pushing a rock uphill anymore. I did
Mm,
for maybe 20 years, maybe even 25, if I'm being honest. But now I feel like there's been like somebody's flipped a switch. I think a couple of things have happened. I think the whole unconscious bias trend in the workplace
yeah.
has made people more aware. The focus that's been put on mental illness has made people more aware of the importance of the human mind. I think that there's more programs in the workplace about well-being. I think all of these things have contributed to kind of create more fertile ground for our thinking and our approach. But again, it was really, really hard along the way. And I think, the message, if I were speaking to my younger self, I would just say, or to young women out there, like, don't give up. It's not like I found this thing. Uh, I, it really was part of me even when I was young. There's
Mm,
probably something in you right now that you really love to do. And I think when you put strength on strength, when I was 13 years old, I used to make the posters at my high school advertising all of the sporting events and the book fair and the spring musical. I was like the poster person. And so I was always dealing with communication and how to convince
yeah.
people to do something.
Mm,
So if you look back into my past, you can find it there. And I was actually dealing with visuals too, because I would make a slogan and I would make a visual to go with it, like a trigger in a sense. So I think if you examine your own life and what you really love to do, putting strength on strength is really powerful, because then you love it and you're passionate about it and you care about it and you want to just keep digging more and more in, to becoming an expert. And I guess that's the last thing, just to as much as possible throughout life, become an expert in something, and that means specializing.
yeah.
You don't need to know about everything. I think we are already a world of specialists. Well, people will come to you for your specialty, what you know more than other folks. And these are the years when you're young to build that expertise. So if you have a choice between two different jobs, one that's really, really easy for you, but you're not going to learn anything, and another one that's a little bit harder, but you're going to learn a lot, take the one where you're going to learn a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it's something that no one can ever take away from you, that expertise, that insight that you can use to really harness a great life, because you make your purpose your job, and it's connecting all the dots, which I think is so great with you, Leslie. I can see that you connected the dots in your own life, and then you supercharged that, and you're connecting the dots with the power of instinct and how you got to those theories, and that they're based on data and science and expertise and your insight over 30 years of helping companies grow, helping them with marketing and people. So how would you describe your leadership style?
Ooh, um, I my leadership style, I guess I would say, is more of like being a teacher. So, we're consultants here at Triggers Brand Consulting, but I don't really think I'm a consultant, and I certainly don't think that I'm selling anything.
Mm,
Um, and I think that as soon as you start selling something, you go down a bad path. I really want to turn other people onto this way of thinking. So that's what fuels me in pretty much every situation, whether it's with a client or whether it's with my people at my company. I'm just teaching, and because I want to share this and I want everyone to think this way, because I know how useful it is. And I care way too much for sure. That's probably my greatest weakness, because you didn't ask me that yet, but that is definitely my greatest weakness. I care way too much, and have way too many sleepless nights. But um, that is my leadership style, is basically to teach.
Yeah. And you already answered another question, Leslie. So that's wonderful. So tell us about your goals and your plans for the next years for you, Leslie.
I think it's very consistent with what I just said. We are right now a boutique consulting firm.
Yeah.
We have, we're very, very fortunate. We've got some wonderful Fortune 100 clients, but I would like to see this approach used everywhere. And we've been on a mission to keep expanding the categories that we use this in, or that use our approach. So we've started out in consumer products, consumer packaged goods. Then we went into healthcare, then insurance, then financial services, B2B, B2C. Like we've now pretty much done, most of it, but there's certain categories, certain verticals we haven't done yet. And I'm very interested in just keeping on expanding and showing more and more companies how to use this. I'm also looking at different kinds of training approaches. My dream is like before a chief marketing officer takes a new job at a company that he would basically spend 2 weeks with us, and be able to go into his job knowing so much more and kind of have and do a project before he actually comes. So he has the knowledge of exactly what's going on his business at the implicit level, what's driving either the brand, if it's not growing very well, if it's a legacy brand, for example, that needs to be turned around.
Mm.
He would know, he would have basically the playbook when he starts the job. So those are some of the things that we're looking to do in the future. Certainly bringing AI to more of our approach, more of our system, in order to digitize more of it. A lot of it already is digitized, but we're looking at more and more ways to do things in a more automated process so that we can, scale more quickly.
Leslie, what would you want people to take away from your story?
Never give up. Listen to your gut, listen to your instincts, be passionate about something. Don't let people tell you you're wrong. Don't back down. Do it nicely. Do it nicely. Do it collaboratively. But stick to your guns, because if there's something gnawing at you and you feel that you feel that there's a better way to do something, find that better way. You really can accomplish anything in life. I really do believe that. But it takes a lot of hard work. I personally work way too hard, and I am definitely a workaholic and a perfectionist. But what that hard work does is it produces, results. So don't give up. Keep on pushing, and believe in your dreams.
Leslie, I'm so thankful for your story because you really are a visionary that was often ahead of her times, that had to grow into her boots. And you really show that with your story. You show that with your work, with your incredible insight, your wisdom, and also this incredible book, The Power of Instinct, which is really a Bible for supercharging and revolutionizing market growth or personal growth. So it's really for everybody out there. So we want to give a huge shout out to you in this book. Please go out, get the book. It is amazing, and it will help you so much in your personal or company's journey. You're a pioneer, you're a disruptor, and we are very grateful to have you on She Can as a mentor and role model today.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. And what a wonderful podcast you have to bring all of these good ideas to your audience. I want to thank you for having this podcast and being a role model as well.